are all, if we get a little rough around the edges, just don't worry at all about sending us a little chat or jumping right in. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us tonight / this afternoon for the launch of the Illinois Review Want issue. I'm Marcella Schulach, the managing editor and poetry editor, and I will just mention that I'm filling the shoes of Janice Weitzman, who founded this journal. You're looking at our beautiful cover. It's entitled 1014, and it's by Matt Gold. And our back cover is called Bride to Be by Lawrence Bridges. And thank you, Anthony Michael Moreno, for the cover design. You can find a lot more wonderful art inside. This journal was founded and is run by alumni of the Shandy Rudolph Graduate Program in Creative Writing at Bar-Ilan University. And I'm just going to introduce the editors right now. There's Karen Marone, creative nonfiction and production editor. She's the one who made these beautiful pieces of art jump onto the ether page. Jane Medved and I switch off between poetry and creative nonfiction. Maybe you can wave a little when I call your name.
Wave. Can we leave?
Karen, you want to wave? Okay. Nadia Jacobson and Nat Hinkes and Mitch Ginsburg are the fiction editors. And tonight we are going to say a sad farewell to Mitch Ginsburg. It's his last issue. He's leaving us to produce and report for the Israel Story podcast. Tonight couldn't have taken place without our wonderful intern, Rachel Tversky, and our webmaster, Yossi Nahemi, and our publicity and tech guy, Yoni Hammer-Kasoy. We are aided in every issue by amazing guest editors who really, really shape the conversation that we curate each time. And in this issue, you'll immediately notice the fresh energy of guest poetry editor, W. Todd Kaneko. He's got a new book coming out called The Dead Wrestler Elegies for some fun and heartbreak. And I just want to mention here that 2 of our recent guest editors have become state poet laureates, Julia Bausma of Maine and Lauren Camp of New Mexico. So Todd, good luck. Creative nonfiction guest editor is Jill Talbot, who literally wrote the book on essay forms. Check out her forthcoming, The Essay Form, parentheses S, from Columbia University Press. And our fiction guest editor is Gary Fincke, whose most recent book of flash fiction is called The Corridors of Longing, and the title really couldn't have been more apt. In this issue, you will find no dearth of longing, yearning, wanting, and having in English originals and in translation from the Romanian, the Danish, 13th century Egyptian Arabic, 16th century French, writing from prisons and from the free world. In lieu of our usual interview, we respond to the recent Dobbs v. Jackson case with a roundtable about abortion, childbirth, miscarriage, and single motherhood by Iris Jamal Dunkel, Pachenda Bao, Hei Jing Hook, and me. We won't give detailed introductions because our bios are all in the contributor notes and in the masthead. And we are most grateful, dear reader, dear listener, for your presence. More than anything else, these poems, stories, essays, translations, and works of art want your presence. Thank you for being here with us, for reading, and for bearing witness. So now I'm going to turn this over to Jane Medved, who will tell you about this issue's dedication.
Okay, can we lose the cover?
You can. Do you want to move to Karen's work here?
Yeah, I want to be able to see my notes. So hi, I'm Jane Medved. I'm a poetry editor, rotating creative nonfiction editor with Marcella. While we were putting this issue together in August, we got the shocking and sad news that one of our original founding poetry editors had died suddenly, and we decided to dedicate this issue to her and showcase some of her work. I'm just going to read you a couple paragraphs from the memoriam statement that I have inside of the journal and one of the poems that we decided to showcase. When I first met Esther, Karen, Ada, She was still Karen Boxenhorn. She still had her heart. She was still a healthy student in the Shane D. Rudolph Graduate Creative Writing Program, just like me. The two of us became the first poetry editors for the Elanote Review, and since Karen was also a visual artist, she designed the initial covers back when we were a print journal. As we worked towards our graduate degrees, Karen's heart deteriorated and she became a candidate for a transplant. For months, I visited her as she waited in the hospital. In fact, we had our final class in the lounge of the transplant ward at Hadassah. When she ultimately received a donor heart from a Palestinian woman, Karen became active in compassionate communication between Arabs and Jews. She chose a new name, Esther Karen Ada, to reflect her new complex physical and emotional life. On August 9th, 2022, during what should have been a simple catheterization procedure, her borrowed heart finally gave out. After 40 years of physical struggle and intervention, it was both sudden and eerily expected. It was a terrible blow. Esther left behind 6 beautiful children, some of whom I think are with us now, I don't see everybody, and a growing body of poems. The one I chose to read tonight, The Last of Lights, intertwines a lot of her themes, and here it is. The Last of Lights. You can imagine the fabric washes its color into your body if you try. I take the train past my stop to the central station after the hematologist. I do it obstinately, for I am weary. Try on chenille sweaters in ochre and magenta. In Hebron, there's a statement of boycott. But when a woman says, I hate you, she means you hurt me. I am exhausted. This is why I am like this. Yet the cabbie called up at 8:45 and said, good morning, my darling wife, how are you? And then for 3 minutes, they talked of nothing. And this was the very best of news. Are you like me? Do you yearn for people and their color, their patterns, their ostentations to bring you back to the world after pain and antiseptic? The Christians, with their mind-blowing forgiveness, are turning off diamond Christmas tree lights in Bethlehem, and shopkeepers wonder at their ledgers. In lieu of a pearl, it is Botticelli's Venus, her gentle face enough for the Arabic brochure for breast cancer. Somewhere in a memory, we know a hand on a heart, and that is where the fine stitches are. I want to shop with Iman. We'll buy dresses for both of us embroidered in red thread. Let the black background grow dimmer as we speak, as practical as strong fabric, but not the wrong way out. Israelis, Americans, let us flaunt our need for the material. Let's haunt the Arab shops till we drop. And I'm turning this over to Todd now. You to
Hi
see
there.
her poems, click on the issue.
Hi there. I'm Todd Kaneko, and I'm going to introduce our first poet for this reading. Kendra DeColo is one of those poets. I was just talking to my friend outside, how she's one of these poets who you read a poem and you're like, oh, that one's a Kendra poem. She writes these poems. Her poems, they balance beauty with strength. They deliver this a particular sensuousness with a particular kind of grit. They temper levity with gravity. And the poems in this issue, I think, are really, they show this off big time. Kendra is the author of 3 poetry collections, I'm Not Trying to Hide My Hungers from the World, My Dinner with Ron Jeremy, and Thieves in the Afterlife, selected by Yusuf Koumunyaka for the 2013 Saturnalia Books Poetry Prize. She's also co-author of Low Budget Movie, a collaborative chapbook written with Tyler Mills. She lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and she is phenomenal. Here's Kendra.
Todd, thank you so much. I unmuted. Yes, I am. So honored to be here reading with all of these poets. And Todd, just thank you so much for that introduction. I feel such an affinity and competitive with your work, especially now that I'm getting into metal. So we'll have to talk. All right, so I'm going to read 3 poems that are in the issue. And 2 of these were written before the pandemic and before Roe v. Wade was overturned. So the way that I read these poems feels different than when they were written, which is really interesting. And you might pick up on when those moments are. The first poem is, I have watched toxic men. I have watched toxic men in the dark of an old theater and felt what Lorca calls duende and what my therapist calls displacement. I have watched toxic men weep while eating hot chicken wings, dousing their lips in mercurial milk. I have watched toxic men undone in a paper bag, eyes luminous as mollusks, cacophonous clams. I watched toxic men watching their own movies. I've watched them unfold their genitals like unformed vowels and slowly stroke them into being. I watched toxic men every afternoon one winter when my heart was the wrong end of a violin, candescent as a beetle rotisseried or souvenir off-gassing in a mini-mart. I watched them as a comet, ellipsis, a glow-in-the-dark feeling. I'm sorry, a glow-in-the-dark word for every ugly. I watched them while dissociating, brought back to my body the way a cicada might crawl back into its abandoned husk. One spring, I did not watch them. My husband and I saw the Apu trilogy at Film Forum. It was the month before I got, and I remember walking up subway steps, white blossoms bursting out of cherry trees, innocent and obscene. I don't know why I'm thinking about it now, except it was a time when my body briefly belonged to me and I could squander it. The solitude of an almost spring afternoon spent inside a theater could absorb the crackled radiance of Satyajit Ray, then walk back out into the world holding my love's hand as if sauntering through an extended hum, gush and seance, everything whole laid out like a fallen from God's mouth, suddenly without purpose and scene.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we've eaten at a few good ones. I don't even remember the names, but like all good there, you know.
Is that for me? Is that okay? I'm gonna go on. Can you guys see me okay?
Yep. Yeah, I see
Everything
you.
good? Okay, I will continue. All right. The next poem is, I listened to George Harrison's Apple Scruffs after my miscarriage. And of course, sorry guys, of course the procedure talked about in this poem is now illegal where I live. I listened to George Harrison's Apple Scruffs after my miscarriage, the glissando of the harmonica part, so much like counting backwards, autumn light erupting in blisters. How I joked with the anesthesiologist before blacking out. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with it, but when I woke, could feel the wadded suture of my tongue. Heard myself croon, was I your best patient ever? Because didn't I want to have succeeded at something, even if only hiding my suffering? How the first day I went about my business bleeding into a winged pad, pulsating with contractions. The harmonica part like something opening at the glossy hinges, what can't be folded back to its original form, throbbing and iridescent under my life like a vellum pit of stars. I loved knowing a woman's hand secured the needle into my vein, secreting glyphs of narcotics before going home groggy and emptied, eating ramen noodles for dinner, and the harmonica part, little spark of vowels, greased and effervescing. Isn't that what was waiting for me on the other side, like a sun touching the edge of a windshield? And didn't I know I would carry this with me for the rest of my life, and that it is good. The way an injury is said to work labor into the worker's body, that to grieve is not always downward, but sometimes a fervent ascent, not a bridge or hook, but a brilliant spill with no desire to land. And then the last poem I'm going to read is Love Letter with Night Guard and Liam Neeson. And if you recall, Liam Neeson was in a really wonderful trilogy of movies in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. All right, so starting with my night guard though. Stoic and stately bouncer of the world's smallest strip club, I'm delighted every time I pull you out like a sun-kissed can from a creek, so I can say good morning to my husband. Delighted my teeth survived the night, cloaked in their velvet slurry, like a monk feral beneath his robe. Delighted to feel my tongue do their figure eights on the roof of his mouth, even though, let's be honest, we're middle-aged and married, and the last time we morning fucked was before my uterus swelled like a prize pumpkin, back when we could watch a matinee directly after, still wet with 11 a.m., a giant cup of soda sweating between us under the glow of Liam Neeson, surly as a saint, or Tom Hanks cowering in his ship, waiting for that perfect line, say it with me, I am the captain now. Whoever thought I would miss watching a past their prime star pay off his alimony? Liam Neeson hovering above us like a Renaissance angel, that years later I would whisper his words into my husband's ear, say it. What I do have are a very particular set of skills, and it would almost transport us back to when we could sit in the dark, sipping collective air. Oh, guardian of syllables, flash dancer in the supermarket aisle of anxiety, where the only things left are musky bottles of Mountain Dew. Did I start grinding my teeth then, when the world first signaled its descent, the two halves of my body swing dancing, as if pressure might crown a spark, my mouth a parking attendant in God's strip mall, holding her citations and spitting out a star. Lord, I want to taste everything now that oranges are hard to come by. Want to know what my husband feels as his mouth circles the perimeter of an ice cream sandwich, his teeth glimmering like the shores of my childhood where treasure proliferated from the ocean's inky jaw, steadily grinding itself the way anything is ever born. Liam Neeson struggling through a movie so bad, it becomes the only one I want to remember. Thank you.
Go ahead, Gary, jump right in.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that Liam Neeson movie. Yeah, he took care of business. It got silly at the end, but anyway, it's my pleasure to do at least one introduction here. I had a good time judging this. The hardest thing about it was working out the technology. For some reason or another, my browser doesn't pick up submittable the way it should, but that's been corrected. So maybe Nadia knows now that I can do this. But one of those stories that I got a chance to pick that I fell in love with was by a writer by the name of Lorette Luzajic. Lorette is, she's published small fictions recently in such journals as Tramp Set, Unbroken, JMWW, Cleaver, New Flash Fiction Review, and lots more. Her work's been nominated for Best Microfiction, Best Small Fictions, Pushcart Prizes, Best of the Net, and so on. Maybe most interesting to me personally is that she's founding editor of the Ekphrastic Review. My daughter happens to be an artist, a visual artist. So I've paid attention to that particular journal from time to time and recommended it to my daughter, Lorette.
Thank you, Gary, for that wonderful introduction. And all of you for having me here. I'm so honored to have this chance to read my small story. It's called The Rope Artist. It is his hands that bound me first, the intricate way the strange, slender fingers skated along the seams, how they seemed to tangle at the button eye, intent in concentration, then come undone, dancing down to spool and skein. I watched him work the fabric, furrowing, smoothing, the fine needle silver through satin ribboning up and down my spine. I had never been tied down or tied up, but there I was, tethered by the tips of his thumbs and the bead of sweat on his upper lip, as if by a red silk cord. I paid for the garment repairs, saved his name on the slip, and eventually went back with an invitation. Later, he would caress the arch of my foot before binding it against the other, weave me in shibari in a position of prayer. His hands worked the spaces between the skin and the rope, tenderly from tip to toe, as if I was a treasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Marcella Shulak again, and Todd and I selected Jose Hernandez Diaz's poem, Meeting Pancho Villa at a park on the southeast side, because it was just outrageous. The way that it blended our longings, the absurd longings, the true longings, as true as they are, and the mundane. And to be honest, I have always been in love with Pancho Villa myself, so I was kind of a pushover here. Jose is a 217 NEA Poetry Fellow. He's the author of The Fire Eater, and his work appears in the American Poetry Review, Huizache, Iowa Review, Poetry, the Southern Review, and the Yale Review, as well as the Best American Non-Required Reading. He teaches creative writing online and edits for Frontier Poetry. And he has a forthcoming full collection called Bad Mexican, Bad American with Acre Books in 2024.
Thank you for the invite. It's an honor to be here. I just stepped away from my computer right now, so good thing I came back in time. The prose poem I'm going to read is called Meeting Pancho Villa at a Park on the southeast side. I was riding my bike at a local park on the southeast side of town. It was a Sunday morning at the end of May. The sun was mild and spring was almost over. Just as I sat on a bench to take it all in, I saw the ghost of Pancho Villa smoking a cigar on an adjacent bench with the large brown horse at his side. I went up to him. Un honor, General, I said. The pleasure is mine, he said. You speak English, I said, shocked. No, but this isn't necessarily reality, he said. What do you mean, I asked. Have you considered that I've been dead for decades? You're merely imagining me, he said. Why would I imagine Pancho Villa on a lazy Sunday at the park? I haven't taken any drugs, I said. You romanticize the past like many, hiding behind your cultural heroes to avoid simple pleasures like a casual day at the park, he said. Fascinating, I said. As I thought about what Villa said, he suddenly disappeared, horse and all, in a puff of cigar smoke. The sun was shining a little stronger at this point. Still, I decided to play a game of pickup basketball with the locals and then went home to rest for the work week ahead. Thank you.
Jose, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm Jill Talbot, and I'm here to introduce one of the essayists in the issue, Gabe Montesanti. But first, I want to share why I selected her essay along with Jane. The title, The Buzz of Prison Lights. When I edit a theme issue, I look for work that offers a unique approach to the theme, and Gabe's essay achieves this brilliantly. The essay details how the persona struggles with alarming side effects from medication while visiting a prison to teach a poetry class. In this immersive essay, readers experience not only the atmosphere of the prison, but how the persona feels in her body. Also, Montesanti expertly weaves time throughout the piece in various ways. The wanting is varied as well. The persona's desire for a psychiatrist to return her voicemails, for the buzzing to cease, for her family to understand her love of poetry, but also the ways the prisoners want to be known through their poems and to know their prof. The writing of the wantings are subtle, which gives them their power. Gabe Montesanti is the author of Brace for Impact, a memoir that I cannot recommend enough. She earned her MFA in creative nonfiction from Washington University in St. Louis. Her piece, The Worldwide Roller Derby Convention, was recognized as a notable essay in the Best American Essays 2020. She lives in St. Louis with her wife. It is my pleasure to introduce Gabe, who will now read a selected portion of her essay.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me and just for the honor of being here. Yes, I'm going to read just an excerpt. I think it's too long to read the full thing, but I tried to make it kind of cohesive. It's called The Buzz of Prison Lights. The prison guard stationed at the entrance of the correctional center was a round man, pink and balding. In one hand, he held a big gulp. The other hand was rooting through my bag, a large clear tote I'd been issued specifically for prison visits. He didn't make eye contact when he said, "Ma'am, you can't bring this device into the facility." For a brief moment, I thought the guard was going to confiscate the little egg timer, but he handed it back with a grunt. "Take it to your car." This was the first time I had been busted for anything illicit. Before I started visiting the prison, they had checked my urine for drugs and warned me not to wear anything distressed or camouflaged. Multiple times, they told me I would be turned away without my prison ID, on which was a slightly blurry photograph of me wearing a blazer that I thought made me look older than my 25 years. I wasn't sure whether I was allowed to smile, so I arranged my features into what I thought was a neutral expression, but ended up looking more like a grimace. I was grateful for the walk back out into the chilly spring air. My body was buzzing, and the only thing that calmed it was motion. It had been 5 months since my first manic episode and subsequent diagnosis of bipolar disorder. I knew nothing about mania outside of what I was experiencing, a feeling of invincibility, hyperactivity, seemingly unlimited energy. The doctor at the outpatient program wanted me to keep a mood log on which would chart my highs and lows on a convenient little spreadsheet. There was space to track any recreational drugs and alcohol, both of which I'd been warned to immediately cease and did, out of fear of making the mania worse. There was no space, however, to mark the side effects from the prescribed medication. My hair was coming out in the shower. My cursive lettering, which was ordinarily tight and neat, was sprawling and shaky from my new tremor. The buzzing, too, was a side effect, though it was hard to distinguish from the feeling of mania. Was I manic? Just a week ago, my psychiatrist assured me I wasn't. "Are you sleeping?" the shrink had asked me. "Yes, but are you blowing all your money again?" "No, but why does it feel like there are cicadas flying around inside of me?" "Akathisia, a side effect of the medication." That was his answer. It was a movement disorder, he told me, that made it impossible to stay still. He explained that he was going out of town, but that the blood pressure medication would ease my symptoms. And if not, call me. In the following days, I called many times. They all went straight to voicemail. "This is like the premise of What About Bob?" my fiance Kelly said. "Maybe we should fake an emergency and track down your psychiatrist on vacation." "This is an emergency," I said. That's exactly what Bob thought too. When I responded that I had never seen the movie, Kelly insisted that we watch it. We'd been together 7 years, and I had never seen her so helpless. She simply didn't know what to do. "Is it enough of an emergency to call 911?" she asked. "Let's just try to watch the movie," I answered. I only made it 10 minutes before the internal vibrations forced me off the couch. I couldn't rid myself of the feeling that I stepped through a spider web. Our dog, Lady, who I'd already taken on 3 walks in the last few hours, lifted her head and then set it back down on her paws. Could she sense something was wrong? Could the prison guard, who sent me back to my car, sense that I was hiding more than an egg timer? I placed the timer in the glove compartment next to my phone and the blood pressure medication that was supposed to help with the buzzing. It wasn't. My whole body was vibrating. It felt like I was in an airplane during a particularly bad stretch of turbulence. Back in the prison lobby, the guard was sucking on his big gulp, eyes closed to the dim fluorescent lights. I stepped under the metal detector and set my bag onto the conveyor belt. The guard motioned for my badge. He handed me a walkie-talkie and a small button on a cord I was to put in my pocket in the event of an emergency. He scrutinized the photo on my prison ID and finally raised his gaze to meet mine. We locked eyes and I saw my reflection in his glasses. I still wasn't quite used to my brown hair, which had been purple just a few months ago when I was manic. I pushed through the prison's double doors. My body felt like it was about to take flight. Men in oatmeal-colored garb were wandering, zombie-like, in the courtyard. Feet away was a barbed wire fence, and in the distance were 2 visible watchtowers. Dark figures moved around inside them. I scanned the grounds for someone I would recognize, but saw only strangers. Run. The thought popped into my head. Run through the courtyard and up the steps and down the hall. The akathisia had a voice, and my body couldn't move fast enough to comply. My pace quickened. I felt the eyes on me. Running wasn't allowed in a place like this. What would happen if I broke the rule? I could imagine the guards with binoculars up in the watchtowers identifying me as a threat, the squealing of radios, voices calling for me to stop. Would I be tackled to the ground, or would the whiteness of my skin, my gender, and my visitor status prevent that from happening? I quickened my pace enough that my hair blew back in the wind, but I didn't run. As my heart rate accelerated, the frenzied feeling in my chest quieted. My body in motion was the only thing that calmed it. The guard who sat in the entrance to my classroom was flipping through a magazine. He was younger and kinder looking than the guard at the front of the prison. "How's it going?" he asked me. "Fine," I lied. What if I couldn't make it through class? The thought had been running through my mind all day. What would my students think? I set my bag down on the table beside the guard and briefly considered warning him that I might not make it for 3 hours. I was used to making small talk with him, but I had never confided anything this personal. Often, my students were late in arriving to class due to circumstances outside of their control, sudden lockdowns or inspections or things they never talked about. The 2 of us enjoyed each other's company, though usually we only discussed the dreary Missouri weather or headlines from the news, about which we talked with a kind of detached curiosity. "What are you teaching today?" the guard asked me. I dug through my bag and pulled out a folder thick with graded assignments and new poems to pass out. "Have you heard of William Carlos Williams?" I asked him. The guard shook his head no. He had this poem called Patterson where he says, "No ideas but in things." "What's that supposed to mean?" the guard said. Well, Williams wrote about things directly. He was also a physician. Some of his short poems were written on his prescription pads. Briefly, I thought of the scripts that I had been handed in the outpatient program. There had been nothing poetic on those except maybe the word lithium, which looked oddly beautiful in cursive. I began reciting one of his most famous poems to the guard. "So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens." "That's pretty, I guess," the guard said. He flipped another page of the magazine. "So much depends," I repeated. My chest was starting to purr again. I bounced on the balls of my feet. "Do you hear the rhyme with chickens?" "Not really," the guard admitted. "No ideas but in things. The egg timer in my glove compartment, my medicine, my blue ballpoint pen, the prison ID badge dangling from my shirt, the goldfish in the opening scene of What About Bob, the cheap ring on Kelly's finger, graded poems stuffed into a green folder. They were poems my students had written about difficult, complicated material, trauma and sex and racism and violence. It was 5 past the hour and my students were still absent. I arranged the tables into 2 clusters and wrote the red wheelbarrow on the whiteboard. My handwriting resembled my state of mind. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. I wanted to be ready to plow forward, but my students had just wanted me to slow down. A week earlier, they had spent an hour chewing on the language in a Walt Whitman poem. "You're going too fast," one student commented, when I had interrupted the conversation by saying, "Let's move on." I couldn't help it. My chest, the revving motor in my body. Even when I wasn't akathisic, this was hard for me. I was used to doing things fast. At one time, I was a sprinter, a swimmer. I had blown through college in 3 years, taken almost no time before graduate school. "What does your tattoo mean?" another student had asked. He pointed to my arm. The tattoo was a droplet of water falling into a circular pool. "It represents an illness I have," I told him. This was not a lie, although the full truth was that I had just liked the way the droplet looked, and so I had it tattooed onto my body during my last manic episode. I didn't think hard about it. There was nothing sentimental about it. No ideas, but in things. "Where are they?" I asked the guard. He looked up from his magazine and consulted his wristwatch. The clock in the classroom was permanently stuck at 11:11. On our first day of class, I had told my students to make a wish, but no one laughed. "I don't know," he replied. But then his walkie-talkie chirps, and I heard a muffled voice speaking. Nodding at me, the guard said gruffly, "The inmates are coming." Seconds later, they burst through the door, 17 of them. They ranged from early 20s to mid 60s. Everyone was talking and no one seemed to be listening. "Professor," one man shouted, "you're going to love the poem I wrote this week." "Prof," another man chimed in, "when you leave here, do you listen to Taylor Swift? I just need to know what you listen to when you leave here." I didn't answer. I was too focused on the screeching of chairs against linoleum, the high-pitched buzz of the prison lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. That was really awesome. I think Illinois really lucky to have that essay in the issue. So thank you for that. I'm going to introduce our next poet. And it's Dorothy Chan. Dorothy's a vibrant voice in contemporary Asian American poetry, but really, Dorothy's a vibrant voice in poetry, a vibrant voice, period. Their work in this issue are drenched in this powerful longing and hurt in the speaker's past that spills into our own presences with the poems. And Marcella and I were super psyched to be able to include them in this issue. Dorothy is the author of most recently Babe. That's their most recent book. In addition to Revenge of the Asian Woman, Attack of the 50-Foot Centerfold, and the chapbook Chinatown Sonnets. They are an assistant professor of English at the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, and the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Honey Literary. So here is the vibrance and power of Dorothy Chan.
Thank you, Todd. And hey, Todd, hey, it's really great to see you. And thank you so much to you and Marcella for the beautiful issue and for putting this reading together. I'm very excited to be reading, and I'll just get right into it. I have an asthma attack in the middle of the night, and I'm reminded of the countless times the high school PE teacher would call me slow and force me to keep running, even though I was gagging, throwing up on the pavement. My breath short-circuiting, staring up at a clear sky like they do in the movies, wondering when the simple act of breathing would come back to me. I was caught slow, made an example of, the other kids laughing as they ran past me. I remember being the only Asian girl in the sea of whiteness. No, sea is too glorious a word. These white girls shoved me around during games of basketball in their matching outfits because their mothers were taught them femininity. Their nails digging through my shirt, playing victim when the PE teacher asked what was going on. The white girls went to the mall. The white girls decorated cakes. The white girls dated the white jock boys who secretly longed for me and who were too young for Asian fetish. The white girls wanted to be elementary school teachers and nurses. I wanted to take over the world. I only ate store-bought cake. I cursed the white jock boys who secretly longed for me. I wanted to take over the world. My brother scolded me for that thought. He taught me how to play basketball and screamed at me so loudly the whole neighborhood could hear. He was beat up in locker rooms when he was my age for being Chinese. He said I deserved to be made fun of because the other kids wanted to be more athletic. I told him that anyone who rests on athleticism is doomed and selfish. I went to his room. He went to his room, slamming the door in my face. He is 12 years my senior. Last year, I deleted his number from my phone. And the second prose poem was inspired by the binge watching of the OC I did over the summer, especially the season when Marissa Cooper gets a girlfriend. At dawn, after I kiss a girl for the first time, we get breakfast in the Ithaca Commons because she loves diner coffee. She asked me how I feel about our practice. By practice, she means her lap on mine, my hands over her back, our tongues in deep, our lips in an O, sealing the deal. By practice, she means the long kiss while three boys watched us like their pocket-sized PG-rated male gaze porno of college girls. I drank my strawberry milkshake and laughed with her over their disappearance once the kiss was over. She holds my hand, we eat French fries, and I think about female closeness, or how I used to watch girls in Hong Kong share French fries, dipping them into their soft serve for a real treat. The sun comes up. I want to kiss her again. 3 days pass. The sun goes down. I think about the scene in Showgirls when Nomi Malone sits atop the Flamingo Las Vegas munching on a burger and fries, the lotus flower of the hotel blending in with the sunset. I remember being 10 inside Caesar's palace looking up at the ceiling's painted clouds, the fountain of the gods, Prada, Gucci, Versace. Whenever a sun rises or sets, time stops. It's like a picture book. Whenever I like a girl, I suddenly remember my childhood. The sun goes down. Maybe it's because the love is pure. She picks me up in her Jeep. We go back to her place, stripped to our underwear and take a nap. She licks my ear. I kiss her on the cheek, then the edge of her lips. We laugh, then lips on lips on lips on lips on lips. I think about that pivotal moment in pop culture when Marissa Cooper falls in love with Alex Kelly on the OC. Marissa's California girl hair, that all teeth smile when Alex drives her in her Jeep and the sun goes down. I think about saying the word girlfriend. Whenever I like a girl, I suddenly remember my childhood. We wake up, she does my makeup. I wonder what would have been if the network hadn't cut Marissa and Alex's relationship short. If Marissa could have been badass instead of tragic. There's nothing more powerful than two women in love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. That was beautiful poems. Thank you. So I'm here to introduce Jeff Friedman. I have to say I'm a sucker for anything to do with memory. Please do not inundate me though with lots of submissions on memory, but I'm just interested in formation and deformation of memory and the slippery nature of them and how we grasp things in our minds. And so it was a pleasure to receive Jeff's Another Memory Gone, which I'll read shortly. Jeff Friedman's 10th book, Ashes in Paradise, will be published by Mad Hat Press in March 2023. Friedman's poems and mini stories have appeared in American Poetry Review, Poetry, Poetry International, New England Review, Flash Fiction, Funny, Best Microfiction 2021 and 2022, and The New Republic. He's received an NEA Literature Translation Fellowship and numerous other awards. Meg Pocras and Friedman's co-written collection of microfiction, The House of Guana Padano, was recently published by Pelicanesis. Jeff?
Thank you so much for that introduction, Naja. God, it's great to read with everybody. I mean, the stories and poems have been so powerful. So thank you for choosing my piece, Gary, and Marcella and Todd for putting on the reading. Appreciate it. And I'll read, without another word, I'll read Another Memory Gone, which feels like a kind of biography, autobiography of myself, Another Memory Gone. But anyway, there's a hole where a memory used to be. I think it may have been a good memory because I was smiling when I tried to remember it. I even gave out a chuckle without knowing why. There are things falling in the hole where the memory lived: twigs, feathers, stones, the hats of houses, the loose dresses of harridans, plush oranges, an old man's hump, the phone booth on some corner, a solemn scarf, even a monk staring out a window at a snake yielding to a large bird plunging down at it. There may even be other memories falling into the hole, like the moment the young woman's hands rose stiffly over the half notes on the out-of-tune piano, or the moment the windows sweated in the hot summer, or the clouds fell over the trees, or the manhole covers rolled down the streets, or the shiny quarters flipped in air all at once. Me on the sidewalk, looking up, calling heads. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that was great, Jeff. Thank you. I want to really quick, can I just give a real quick shout out to some of our poets out there? I think we have some poets here who are not reading. Just hi, Frankie Dress, Luzajic, Melissa Fight Johnson, here in Cook. You know, hey, I wish we could have you all reading tonight. And, you know, thank you so much for trusting us with your poems. This is a really dynamic issue in prose and poetry, and I'm super psyched to have been a part of putting it together. So this next poet is Cassandra Whitaker. When Marcella and I sent out this acceptance to Cassandra with these poems about wolves, the first thing I did was like Google to see her other poem, see their other poems about wolves. And what I can say is this: Cassandra Whitaker writes killer poems about wolves. You can seek them out too, because they're really, really great. The ones in this issue are they have this symbiotic relationship between the speaker and the wolf, and the poems are really beautiful. They're as beautiful as they are terrible, because wolves are terrible, right? Cassandra Whitaker is a trans writer from rural Virginia. Their work has been published in or is forthcoming in Barrel House, 14 Hills, Kitchen Table Quarterly, The Little Patuxent Review, Fog Lifter, Evergreen Review, and the Comstock Review. They're a member of the National Books Critics Circle, and I'm not kidding when I say you should seek out all those poems about wolves. Here's Cassandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. That's really nice. Hi, I'm Cassandra. I hope you can hear me okay. I've got a little throat thing going on. So yeah, I have a daily writing practice, and all year I've been wrestling with these wolves, and these wolves are a lot of different things. They are inherited concepts, they're awful inherited ideas you get from your parents, they are cisgender and heterosexual normativity, they are oppressive culture, they're all sorts of things. And so here we go. The first one I'm going to read is called I Make a Roof Out of the Wolf. I make a roof out of the wolf, eating on its back, broken and racked, stretched, propped up with bones, coughed up from a belly with no bottom, the wolf belly. I sit on its heart, a plump red cushion, and lean against a pelted blanket, drinking from a skin of want that never runs out of thirst. How kind for the wolf to remind, even in death, it owns my home. Old knowledge of the body, a home. Settled in softness, waiting for softness to assume its body, I make a roof out of the wolf. I brace its beaten fur with its bones. I keep my knowledge dry. I keep my knowledge free from sun rot. The moon cannot find me, sheltered by want. The second poem is called The Wolf Eats. The wolf eats when the full moon asks. The wolf turns its emptiness inside out and fills up the moon inside the belly. Flesh is plentiful. The earth has made so much flesh. It is the one thing emptiness does not tire of, flesh. It is not precious. It is not precious, flesh. It is more plentiful than ever before, flesh. Emptiness demands so much. Emptiness requires all. The wolf listens, tracks, senses emptied of all but emptiness. There is no end to it. Everything the wolf owns is spent as the wide open. The wolf eats and eats until the moon is full enough to ask for more. There is always more. It is the one song the wolf has written. Everything the wolf owns is stolen from a mouth, swallowing a mouth, swallowing a mouth. Thank you. It has been super fun to read here. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Todd and I had such a good time with your poetry. We just kept arguing about which ones to include. Thank you. Adam, are you here? Adam Day?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good. I thought that was you. Todd and I chose Adam Day's poetry because those honestly were the best line breaks we've ever seen. We just kept looking at them and saying, can you believe this? You can read the poem so many different ways. I really urge you to take a look at these line breaks. It's been a long time and we were so delighted. The content is also incredible. I don't want to minimize that, but we were really in awe of these gorgeous, stunning line breaks. Adam Day is the author of Left-Handed Wolf, so it follows Cassandra's very nicely, LSU Press, and of Model of a City in Civil War, which is Sarah Ban Books. He's the recipient of a Poetry Society of America Chapbook Fellowship for Badger, Apocrypha, and a PEN American Literary Award. Adam, take it away.
All right. Thanks so much for your kind words. The first poem, there are three, all three are pretty short, which is a mode I've been working in for a while now. A kind of silence. Kid on the corner selling water beside the news kiosk. Its interplay of ruin and repair. His father is elsewhere on his knees, eating weeds, body the blue-green of frozen pond in a broigle, and still asking in his aloneness, how much of what's not said is what cannot be said, or perhaps more importantly, what the speaker is unwilling to say, what they are withholding. Stoplight rain. Propane tanks tossed in the yard. Neighbor went inside dressed and came out naked, the whole horse of him, with nowhere to put his wallet. What do you need, love? What kind of enough would be enough? The trust. Man on an oil derrick in grave clothes is a kingfisher bowing in a pool of broken light. Still, the moon isn't all that beautiful, boom hinged to a platform offshore, like a bucket lost down a well. Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun.
And Karen, you're gonna, before you close down the night, I just want to thank Ayelet Sabari for being here. Ayelet is the next creative nonfiction editor, and Allison Powell will be editing poetry. And we'll start reading again in December for Money, the Money issue. Karen.
Thank you. And thank you so much to all of our readers. It was really amazing listening to you read your work in your own voices and to watch you bring it to life. It's always kind of a miracle that happens between the text appearing on our website and then suddenly seeing it come to life with you. And thank you to all of our other contributors who came to listen and comment and just cheer everyone on. It was beautiful, and we really wish we could have had you all read. But fortunately, our launch for the Want issue doesn't end here. Over these next few weeks, check out our Facebook and Twitter and our website, because we're going to be rolling out videos of individual contributors reading their work. And this is a reminder, if you're published in this issue and you haven't sent a video, please do that. We would really love to feature you on our website. And